Hello everyone, and welcome back to Plantastics Research. Today we're going to be discussing my research project on invasive plants. We're going to be discussing what is more beneficial, removing invasive plants or using herbicides. So today is going to be very short, brief, but I'm going to be explaining how my project implements with our last video on data collection and how I plan to implement the project. And hopefully, this will be helpful to any of you as well. So this is our week 2 video, and we are going to get started. I hope everyone's doing well, and let's go. So our standard for this video is a little bit one that we've probably discussed before, but this is a different part of it. So this is SB05, and it is to obtain, evaluate, and communicate information to analyze the diversity of plant adaptations and responses to changing environmental conditions. Now, we are going to be focusing on a little bit of parts from this specific one, and it's construct an explanation to describe the diversity of plants and their adaptations in relations to different ecosystems and changing environments. Now, this is a very important thing to understand because the whole point of my project is to see what two different types of uses affect the different invasive plants in the environment. And invasive plants change sometimes of the ecosystems they are in. They sometimes affect the habitats that they arise in, and also it can affect the different animals that live around them as well. And this is just one of the things that invasive plants are, and which is why this is why I wanted to focus on this project specifically, because I've always wanted to work with different types of plants, and I think invasive plants especially are some of the most important to work with because of how they have a big effect on the environment. And I feel like it's really important to understand which plants are invasive and which aren't. And they are sometimes hard to classify. So that is where the challenge comes in. But once you realize which ones are which, then you say, oh, well, this one, this one is growing rapidly, but this one isn't. And it's kind of like a trade-off benefit with each of the plants. So that's why I'm focusing more on invasive plants than regular plants. And we also talked about in our last season, which was environmental effects on plants. Now this chapter, we are going to be focusing on human interaction on plants. And this is a human interaction. However, even though it started out as an environmental effect, I'm putting in myself, which would be the human effect, onto the plants to see if there could be a change. And this is not only beneficial for myself, but this is beneficial for research and everything as well. So here are the key terms for this week. Not as many as I usually do, but that's because this is a brief lesson. So what are invasive plants? Invasive plants are a non-native plant that grows in a specific habitat or environment. And as I said before, invasive plants usually grow where places they are not native from, which is a really common thing when it comes to invasive plants. So overall, it's usually based off sometimes where different places. Invasive plants can travel in many different forms and ways. Habitat. Physical and biotic factors that are present in an area. Physical being, let's say, beings, animals, and biotic, which would be also, animals and things like that in a specific area, which will be considered their habitat or environment. So that is what a habitat is. Methods review. So I'm going to teach you guys a little thing now. Every research project has a methods, and it's very simple of how the methods explains everything, because the methods is the way that you do it. So where will this be held? It will be held in my backyard. I have a really diverse backyard with many different plants and different types of diversity in the botany in my backyard. So I felt like it was a really good place to start off. And because we can't really go many places and things like that, I feel like the backyard is a really good place to start my project off. And it also makes it really easy when you have a lot of diverse plants and things like that in one area, because it makes it easier to select, hey, I could use this one, or I could use this one. So it's a really good thing. This will be during the middle of the day. I try to go when it's usually the middle of the day when the sun is out, so it's easier to classify. because if I tried to do it later on in the day, it probably wouldn't turn out the best. So I feel like if I do it during the middle of the day or around lunchtime or things like that, around 12 to around 11 to 12, I feel like that's a good time when the sun is mostly up, like I said here. And how? I will first get the classification, and if you guys don't know what classification, that means figuring out what type, the classification of the invasive plant or plant that I'm reviewing. Yes. So I'm at this very moment, I'm in the process of classifying the plants in my backyard and determining and separating them from which are and aren't invasive. So I found very few features, but that's because it's a very diverse, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint. But that's my first step as of right now, and that's the first thing that I did in my method. I decided to first classify which are invasive and which aren't. Next, I will compare herbicides and actually removing the plants to record which one is more effective. So, once I collect the plant, I'm going to see if removing it versus putting herbicides on them, which herbicides are used to kill off invasive plants, things like weeds and things like that, that help usually shorten and lower and decrease the population of a lot of invasive plants in a specific area or ecosystem. It can be used very often, especially when people are gardening or things like that. They want to be able to use different herbicides so they don't have to pull up things from their yard. The purpose. Why? Well, this why is a very important question when you're doing a research project because it determines why are you doing it in the first place. I'm comparing to find which is more beneficial. Herbicides are actually removing the invasive plants from a specific area. And like I said, it's really important to keep in mind that when you classify the type of plant, are the plants that you're removing key for the environment, or are you mistakenly pulling an invasive plant? These are also things you have to keep in mind when doing an invasive plant. Some pros for removing invasive plants is the plant is actually no longer in the area. So once you remove it, that means that it will no longer be there to continue to grow. However, some do continue to grow, but the ones that we're focusing on aren't really that big. So, but that's more of a specific biological thing. And then herbicides, easier to maneuver and is more effective chemically. And that is true. It's something that affects the plant. It's growing feature, so sometimes it slows its growing process. It can kill the plant over time. So it would probably be something that's a little bit more beneficial in stopping the plant growth, and maybe removing the plant would probably do the same as well. So they're both those are both pros. Now, some cons that I didn't put in the slideshow is that for removing the plant, some invasive plants could in fact be poisonous, and even though you're wearing gloves or things like that, which I will always be wearing gloves while constructing these projects. However, a lot of things you don't want to pull up another plant or have it, just be unbeneficial. And herbicides sometimes can kill off regular plants as well, not just the invasive plants that you want to, because it kind of gets in the soil as well. So you want to be cautious of that. So, like I said before, that was a really good lesson. Well, I was very, very brief and everything like that. Oh, also, I want to reiterate one more thing for you guys. Just give me 1 second. So, there's one more thing that I would like to add as far as how we consider and construct our day-to-day researching. And I was going to, let you guys know on how research is done and how, when we come up with these projects, how we present them. So this is a project that we're doing for Science Fair, and I would like to, because Science Fair is a really good thing. It gives a lot of opportunity, and you can win different things. And I want to encourage you all to say, hey, maybe I could try doing a Science Fair one day if available, and things like that. I'm aware that at these times you're not able to do things like this, but keeping yourself scientifically active is really important, considering that your mind stays going. You are allowed to say, hey, well, maybe this doesn't work. How does this work? Or something like that. You ask hypothetical questions that help figure out the configuration of how you want your lesson to go, or your project to go as well. So that is all for today, guys, and I'm glad that you all were able to come and I was able to share more information with you, and I hope to see you all next week. Have a good day.